There are secrets etched into the very stone of our planet, riddles left behind by the ghosts of our past. For centuries, we've looked to these ancient wonders, believing we understood their message. But the greatest secret of all is hiding in the most famous landmark on Earth. Picture the Great Pyramid of Giza. Go on, close your eyes for a second if you have to. You see a colossal mountain of stone. You see 4 flat, triangular faces meeting at a perfect point against the brilliant blue of the Egyptian sky. This image is iconic. It's in our history books. It's in our movies. It's burned into our collective minds. And this image is a lie. Tonight, we are not looking at the pyramid you think you know. We are looking at the pyramid as it truly is. Not a 4-sided structure, but an 8-sided marvel of impossible engineering. Let me be absolutely clear. This isn't a fringe theory. It isn't wild speculation. This is a fact, an observable, measurable phenomenon, captured on film for the world to see. But this incredible secret is so well hidden, so subtle, that you can only see it from a God's eye view for a few fleeting moments, only twice per year. Which begs the terrifyingly simple question, who were they building it for? Before we venture into the shadows, we must first understand the story told in the light. The official narrative, the one accepted by mainstream Egyptology, is in itself a tale of incredible human achievement. The story begins, as we are told, around 4,500 years ago, during Egypt's 4th dynasty. A powerful pharaoh, Khufu, ascends to the throne. To secure his journey into the afterlife and solidify his legacy as a god on Earth, he commissions the grandest construction project in human history, his eternal resting place, the Great Pyramid of Giza. For decades, we have been taught to marvel at its scale, and the numbers are indeed staggering. Over 2.3 million massive blocks of stone, primarily limestone and granite. Some of these blocks, particularly the granite beams deep inside the king's chamber, weigh up to 80 tons. That's the equivalent of a modern locomotive. All of this, quarried, transported, and lifted to heights of over 480 feet. And how was this wonder of the ancient world achieved? The official story presents a picture of raw human power and simple ingenuity. Tens of thousands of skilled laborers, not slaves as Hollywood would have you believe, working tirelessly for decades. They used primitive tools of copper and a hard stone called dolerite. To lift the colossal blocks, Egyptologists propose vast and complex systems of ramps. Straight ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps, though no definitive evidence for any of these has ever been found. It's a narrative of muscle, sweat, and sand, a testament to what a unified society can achieve with the simplest of technologies. This view has been championed by the titans of modern Egyptology, figures like Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner, who have dedicated their lives to mapping the Giza Plateau. Their models, their books, and their documentaries all reinforce this singular vision. They present the pyramid as a masterpiece of ancient surveying, noting its 4 faces are aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. And in every single one of these academic reconstructions, in every textbook diagram, the Great Pyramid is always depicted as a perfect 4-sided shape, a simple yet elegant pyramidion. That is the official story. A magnificent tomb built with Bronze Age technology. A 4-sided monument for a 4-sided world. It's a clean, simple, and satisfying story. And it is precisely this simplicity that should make us suspicious. History is a story written by the victors and pieced together by those who come after. But sometimes a single, inconvenient fact can appear that threatens to unravel the entire narrative. A loose thread that, when pulled, reveals a completely different picture. For the Great Pyramid of Giza, that loose thread was first noticed from the sky. The year is 1940. The world is at war. A British Air Force pilot, P. Groves, is flying a routine mission over Egypt. As he passes the Giza plateau, he glances down at the ancient monument, a sight familiar to countless travelers before him. But from his unique aerial perspective, and in the specific light of that day, he sees something impossible. Something that no one on the ground for 4,500 years had ever been able to properly see. He raises his camera and takes a photograph. That photograph would become one of the most quietly controversial pieces of evidence in modern archaeology, because it clearly showed the Great Pyramid, with 8 sides. So what exactly did he see? Let's be precise. Each of the 4 massive faces of the pyramid is not perfectly flat. Instead, each one has a slight, almost imperceptible indentation, a shallow concavity that runs in a perfect line from the very apex of the pyramid down to its base. This splits each of the 4 faces into 2 smaller, perfectly equal planes. 4 faces, each split in 2, equals 8. The degree of this indentation is staggering in its subtlety. It's a deviation of only about 1 degree from being perfectly flat. To put that in perspective, imagine a perfectly flat surface the length of a football field. Now imagine a dip in the very middle of that field that is only a few inches deep. That is the level of precision we are talking about, executed on a mountain of stone. It's so subtle that from the ground it's practically invisible, lost in the sheer scale of the structure. But it reveals itself under very specific, almost theatrical conditions. Twice a year, and only twice a year, during the spring and autumn equinoxes. At sunrise and sunset on these days, the sun is positioned at just the right angle to the earth. For a few fleeting moments, as the sun's rays rake across the pyramid, 1/2 of each face is cast in direct light, while the other half is plunged into shadow. The effect is dramatic. The pyramid appears to split in 2, and for just a moment the 8-sided truth is revealed to the heavens. Now, confronted with this undeniable evidence, mainstream Egyptology was forced to offer an explanation, and their explanations are, to be blunt, completely inadequate. The first theory you'll hear is that it's the result of erosion or subsidence, that the massive weight of the pyramid caused the centers of the faces to sag over the millennia. This makes absolutely no sense. Why would this sagging be perfectly symmetrical on all 4 sides? Why would it form a perfectly straight line rather than a more natural curved depression? Natural decay creates chaos, not precision. The second, more popular explanation is that this was an intentional construction technique to better secure the outer casing stones that once covered the pyramid. The idea is that the slight indent would hug the casing stones and hold them in place. But this raises more questions than it answers. Why is this supposedly brilliant technique not found on any of the other dozens of pyramids in Egypt? Why would the builders choose such an incredibly complex and difficult method, which required unparalleled precision, when a simple flat surface would have sufficed? Finally, the most dismissive explanation of all. It was an accident, a mistake. This is perhaps the most insulting theory to the genius of the builders. The men who built the Great Pyramid aligned it to true north, with an accuracy we can barely replicate today. They cut and placed stones weighing 80 tons with joint tolerances of less than a 50th of an inch. To suggest that these master builders accidentally created a perfectly symmetrical 8-sided structure that just so happens to align with a major astronomical event like the equinox is not just improbable, it is statistically absurd. But all of these weak explanations are designed to distract from the single most troubling question of all, the one that breaks the entire official narrative, the perspective. Forget the how for a moment and just focus on the why. Why would you create a feature, a message, an effect that is only visible from the air? How could a civilization without flight even conceive of such a thing? How would they check their work? How could they survey the accuracy of the indentation across a surface of more than 5 acres to ensure the final effect worked? You can't. Not from the ground. The design itself implies an aerial vantage point. It implies a perspective that its builders, according to our history books, should never have had. So the official explanations crumble under the weight of simple logic. Subsidence, construction techniques, accidents. None of them can account for the perfect, symmetrical, astronomically aligned, 8-sided pyramid. When conventional thinking fails to explain the facts, we are left with no choice but to explore the unconventional. We are forced to consider that this was not a mistake, but an act of profound and deliberate genius. And if it was deliberate, then it had a purpose. The first and most grounded alternative theory is that the Great Pyramid is not just a building, but a device, an immense silent astronomical clock. The 8-sided feature acts as a dramatic marker for the equinoxes, the 2 moments in the year when day and night are of equal length. For any ancient culture, and especially one based on agriculture like the Egyptians, these were immensely important dates, signaling the start of spring and autumn, the times for planting and for harvest. This was not a unique obsession. Across the globe, we see other ancient cultures building massive structures to track the heavens. At Stonehenge in England, the rising sun on the solstice aligns perfectly with the stones. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, a serpent of shadow crawls down the side of the pyramid El Castillo, only on the equinoxes. Is it possible that the Great Pyramid is the most sophisticated of these ancient celestial trackers, its 8-sided secret a dramatic chime on its grand cosmic clock? But other researchers believe the design goes beyond mere timekeeping. They propose it had a physical, functional purpose based on a lost science of physics. What if the concave faces were not just for show, but for function? Engineers have noted that a slightly concave surface can provide superior structural integrity, especially against forces like seismic shocks, and Egypt is indeed in a seismically active region. Could the builders have possessed a knowledge of structural dynamics far beyond their time, earthquake-proofing their most important structure? This rabbit hole goes deeper. Other studies have focused on the pyramid's bizarre acoustic properties. Sound behaves in strange, non-linear ways inside its chambers. Could this unique 8-sided shape have been designed to focus or reflect sound, or perhaps other forms of energy we don't yet understand, in a specific way? Could it have been a resonator, a part of a machine? These theories are compelling, but they still struggle to explain the single most damning piece of the puzzle, the aerial perspective, which leads us to the final, most profound, and for some, most disturbing possibility, that the feature was a message. And if you design a message to be read from the sky, it can only be intended for one of 2 audiences. The first audience is us. Imagine the builders, possessing a level of knowledge they knew future generations would lose. How could they leave a signal of their true sophistication? A message in a bottle across a 4,500-year ocean of time. They could have created a technological Easter egg, a hidden feature that would only be discovered by a civilization that had redeveloped the capacity for flight. It was a test, a way of saying, when you can see this, you will be ready to understand who we truly were. The second intended audience is far more unsettling. Ancient texts from virtually every culture on Earth are filled with stories of powerful beings who descended from the heavens. The gods, the sky people, who came in fiery chariots and taught humanity the arts of civilization. Ancient astronaut theorists propose that these were not myths, but memories. And if your gods are in the sky, you build your most important structures for them to see. Perhaps the Great Pyramid was a monumental landmark, a beacon. The eight-sided design might have been a specific symbol, a geometric signature, as recognizable to them as an airport landing strip is to us. It's a wild idea, but we are faced with a wild fact, a design that is real, but that could not be seen by its creators on the ground. When you have eliminated all the logical explanations, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So here we stand, faced with a 4,500-year-old message that we could only begin to read yesterday. We are looking at a structure supposedly built by men in loincloths with simple copper chisels that incorporates a profound secret only visible to gods and birds. The paradox is staggering, and it leaves us adrift in a sea of incredible questions. Is this impossibly precise, eight-sided design simply an architectural quirk, a lucky accident of construction that has been magnified by time and myth? Or is it a deliberate fingerprint of genius, a quiet signature of a lost science, a level of understanding that we are only now, in the 21st century, beginning to comprehend? What does it mean for our place in history, for our very identity as a species, if our distant ancestors were communicating with the sky long before we ever learned to fly ourselves? We are left with a choice. We can accept the simple story we are told in our textbooks and dismiss all of this as coincidence. Or we can look at the evidence with our own eyes. The Great Pyramid is not just a pile of stones. It is a question etched into the bedrock of our planet, and that question is asking us directly, how much about our own past have we truly forgotten? The history books give us one answer, but the stones themselves seem to be telling a very different story. Let me know what you believe in the comments below, and whatever you do, keep asking questions.